I have.
Good. Then I shall start. Welcome everybody, and this is our meeting of the 24th of September, an extraordinary meeting. We'll begin with the apologies and reasons for absence.
It just looks like Leslie then. We haven't got Leslie with us.
We haven't got Leslie with us.
Then.
We haven't got Paul with us, of course. He's hosting the meeting in absentia.
Yes.
And we know he's got a business engagement, and Leslie's not available. Okay, are we happy with the fact that Leslie couldn't be here? She normally is. Okay, good. The declaration by members of any interest pecuniary or other than pecuniary in accordance with the Council's Code of Conduct guide the declaration of Council's interests in related matters. I don't think there's anything on there that I can see. Does anyone need to declare anything?
No.
No. You're up twice now, George.
I know.
We've got two Georges, and Mick seems to have disappeared. His internet's gone or something, or his phone. Okay.
You're supposed to keep the bandwidth down.
There he is, I can see it.
We got Mick back, good. I don't have to approve or reject any applications with respect to dispensations. A reminder to everybody that the meeting is being recorded, and the recording does go on the YouTube afterwards for the public to hear it. So please keep that in mind. At this point, we'll adjourn the meeting for the public session. We've got one member of the public here, Jill Redford, which is good. Jill, is there anything you would like to raise with us?
All it was with I was sort of slightly concerned about was obviously, I expect you've already noticed the screening and assessment for the land behind Lloyd's Green. Obviously, I'm not on social media or anything, so I'm not in connection with sort of people online or anything, sort of to know what the general consensus of opinion or anything has sort of been sort of said about it. But I just sort of slightly concerned and wondered what your thoughts were on the new access route.
Okay, well, you raise a very material point. It's a useful question, Jill. Let me tell you what I found. There are two related applications, really. There was an application for a new garage in Poplar Farmhouse on Poplar Road, initially on the Kenterden side of the front garden, which was approved by Ashford a bit ago, and it was going to have access into it from the lane that goes up the side of Poplar Farmhouse, between there and Poplarfield houses. Now, after that, that application was granted, they then made a new application. I'm telling you about Poplar Farmhouse because it all ties together, as you said, because of the access. Then decided to make a new application instead on the opposite side of the front garden, in other words, on the right side, if you like, of the front garden, with access into it through the front gate, which might be a bit narrow, but that's up to them. The garage would have the door at the house end, so you'd sort of have to drive in and then shuffle around in the front garden and back into the garage. Meanwhile, as you say, there was a screening request put into Ashford for building, I think, 28 houses up behind Lloyd's Green on the land that was earlier being considered in the Ashford Plan 2030, and then it got taken out again. The Parish Council was against that. Residents like yourself were against it. We were all very happy it disappeared. Now, there had been various rumours that ideas were being put forward made that application for planning, would they have an environmental impact assessment demanded of them so that they know in good time? And it is just as the name says, it's for the planning authority, Ashford, to screen the outline application when they say, well, we'd like to do this, here's a plan, 28 houses and what have you. And there are regulations, legal regulations, as to what needs an EIA or not. And, if it's a nuclear power station, it has to have one, and if it's a coal mine, and if it's maybe, I don't know what it is, frankly, but maybe more than 100 houses or something, and if it's this and if it's that, it has to have an EIA. But sometimes there is a matter of judgment to be made, and so they ask the planning authority, Ashford, if we put in this planning application, will we need an EIA or not? And Ashford has given them a decision already, it's been done, that they don't need an EIA, and it should really be basically tick the boxes or don't tick the boxes, doesn't need one or not. It's a technical matter, it doesn't involve the parish council, it doesn't involve residents. They do it as a technical officers thing. Now, and I did warn people when it popped up first, it was on next door, there were various people raising points about it. I said, look, it's a technical thing. If there is a planning application, it comes to the parish council automatically for comment under the statute. They have to ask us what our views are. They don't have to take any notice of our views, but they do have to ask us, and they do have to, as it's called, have regard to them, though it doesn't mean agree with them. But not for the screening opinion. Now, so far so good. The same is true. They didn't ask residents what they felt, so they never asked you what you thought about the screening opinion because it's a technical matter. If they decide to put in a planning application for 28 houses and you are a neighbour of it, and I think you're on the right side of Lloyd's Green, but how far up and down Lloyd's Green they go, I don't know, you'd be asked, but not at this stage. The one thing that I did do was, because I saw that the 28 houses is addressed as Lloyd's Green, and Poplar Farmhouse is Poplar Road, but the access goes up from Poplar Road, and the garage was being moved from one side to the other, as I understand it, in order to accommodate the access. So I put a comment on the Ashford website in respect of Poplar Farmhouse, even though it was closed, and this was a personal thing, it wasn't as the parish council, saying that as a sort of guidance to the planning officers, if they were not aware, this did tie in with the 28 houses. I wanted them to be clear that the two were related, because it seemed to me that it was entirely possible that they wouldn't see them in the same, the same connection. So that's about where that got to. Now, in the screening opinion, when it was given, with the reasons for it, that's on the Ashford website. I don't know if you've gone and looked at it or not.
Yeah.
But there is something that's a bit unfortunate and we're not happy about. It says there, I didn't look it up, I'm afraid, again, to make sure I've got exactly the right words, but I've got roughly the right words. It says, Parish Council, no comments, residents not consulted. Now, it is true that we gave no comments, but we gave no comments because we weren't consulted and we had no place to give any comments. I think it was probably because those decisions, normally, if it's planning, the parish council is always consulted, it has to be consulted, and so they don't have not consulted, they have no comments, sort of tick the box. But anyway, we're not happy with that because it makes it sound as though we didn't care, which isn't true. In other words, it's true, but it's misleading. So Yvonne the clerk has already been on to the planning officer in Ashford, pointed that out. She got a good hearing from the planning officer, who will, she said, go and see if anything can be done to make it clear. I strongly suspect that they can't alter that document. That document is there. It's a legal another document on the portal, a bit like when the Times says something and someone complains, then the Times later puts in a correction. You don't correct the original one because it's already been printed. But you put a new one in. So that's what we will try to get. Now, that's as far as the screening opinion is concerned. I think looking at it in a wider sense, that the Plan 2030 had 40 houses, about, or up to, it may have been up to 40. We were dead against it, like you were, and a lot of other people in the village. And we made that clear to the Ashford in their planning consideration. Then the inspector considered it all. We had our response already in front of him, and he said that they could not have the 40 houses. He was willing to let them have a lesser number on the southern end of the site, which is away from the wood down towards White Cottage, which doesn't help you at all. But Ashford decided to take it out of the plan anyway. Now, I can't say what the position of myself or other councillors would be if or when we see a planning application in a formal sense. I know my starting point is that I would not be very positive about it, but the rules are that we have to take a decision when it's in front of us. We can't take a decision in advance. So my personal view is I didn't like it then, and I don't start from liking it now. The word is I'm predisposed against it, but I can't decide yet.
No, I have got some of the documents relating to the pre-application advice. I got through the Freedom of Information, but which shows like a plan of the house's layout and the entrance in. But funnily, I didn't get the actual response that ABC did to the application. So I've got all the letters and that which have been sent to Ashford, but I haven't got the response that Ashford gave to the applicant. So I'm going to just contact them again and see why their advice that was given to the applicant wasn't actually included in the bundle. But yeah, it gives you an idea of the layout that they're looking at, and obviously they're trying to get round everything that the planning inspector originally said, and I think they've been advised by the council sort of how best to go round that, from what I can glean from what the applicant has done. So as a result, you're welcome to look at it at any time if anybody wants to take a look at what I've got, and I will try and get the rest of it if at all possible.
That's very helpful, Jill, thank you. And it's rather interesting what you just told us, because we had already heard in the past, this ties in with what you just said, we'd already heard in the past that a pre-application advice from the council, Ashford Council, is confidential to the people they give it to. So when we asked for one, we were told we couldn't have it, and obviously now you haven't got it either. What is interesting is that they gave you all the applicants' documents, which it never occurred to me that we would be allowed to have them either. But you have got them, so well done.
Yeah.
The supposition you've got about, that they've maybe told them how to do it, well, the application advice, I can tell you, is to try and be helpful to the applicants, which isn't helpful us maybe. But they also always stress that it's not conclusive. In other words, a planning officer, and they charge for this, the planning officer tells them what he or she thinks, but when it comes as an actual planning application, they don't have to take any notice of what the pre-advice said. They start again. Now, that doesn't help very much if they take the same view, of course, because facts are the same. But incidentally, I am told that if it's for 28 houses or 20 houses, it will go to the planning committee, which done by the officer in the back room. And if it goes to the committee, then as we sit here, our ward councillor Mick Burgess is chairman of the committee, of the planning committee. Although it's quite likely, or maybe even definite, that he probably would give a view but not vote because it's too close to him, especially as he owns a house in Lloyd's Green. But that's as it is. It would at least go to the committee, and you can be sure that if the parish council takes a view on it, which I imagine they would want to be making that view known. Certainly, I'd like to see the papers you've got. If you can pass them to one of us, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I'll send her an email back because she hasn't actually confirmed to me why I haven't got that. Because I said I wanted everything relating to all parties involved. So she didn't sort of say, oh, well, I can't give you this because. So I just want to go back and make sure that I haven't got all that I'm allowed or whatever, or I have, and then I'll know that I've basically got everything in one place. So yeah, I'll pass that on. Once I know, I'll pass that on just so you can have a look at what they've sort of done so far with regard to mitigation and things like that in their sort of ideas.
Sure.
So, but I know they do. They have in the deeds now that the construction company actually have a deal in place that they own this top section and they have had since 2016. So,
section meaning which?
The bit where they want to construct now is the bit just at the top here, imminently behind Lloyd's Green. So they won't.
And the houses will go.
Yeah. So they're going to block that square off at the top where you come in by the garages at Lloyd's Green. There was a notice of contract to purchase in 2016. So by Castlefort Homes, so and they're the beneficiary. So yeah, they got the bit between the teeth.
So in effect, the person who I believe has got a family relationship in Wittersham, they have sold that land on to these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's probably under some sort of deal that if it didn't go through, perhaps it would revert, perhaps. But there is a contract that's been drawn up to say at the moment that it relates to them. So on the deed. So.
Okay. While we're just talking about this, and obviously they're the sort of things that, I mean, let's be honest. Given everything you've said, and generally what we would expect anyway, there's certainly a planning application coming.
Oh, yes.
Sure. And that planning application will have to be assessed against all the usual things. And one of them in this particular instance, or two of them you might say, was listed buildings. Because their chosen access goes right up through Poplar Farmhouse front garden, really. They're going to take a big slice off one side. They're also going to put the big garage in the other corner, plus driving into it. Poplar Farmhouse is listed, and so far as I can see, the setting, which is important, the setting will be greatly changed.
Yes, that's
so
what I...
That is one of the things that I think, people like yourself and maybe ourselves will be making a lot of. There's also White Cottage, which is listed. I think what next to it is.
Because they would have to widen that road, wouldn't they? So that all would have to go, wouldn't it? So
it will make a massive difference
as
far as I can see,
yeah,
including the garage and the trees that have to come down to site the garage. The parish council objected to the garage, by the way.
Yeah.
We said it shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
But if they did all of that, then the Poplar Farmhouse would be greatly changed. And the listed buildings are not only the building, they include the setting. Out to the curtain, which in this case is Alan, did someone say something?
I was going to ask something. Do we know how the owners of Poplar Farmhouse became involved in the process so far?
Right.
Oh, really? Do we? Go on,
No, know how they, because I don't know the people in there at all, so I've got no sort of connections.
I mean, I know them, but I haven't heard from them directly as to how they became involved. And, I just wondered, I thought it was likely somebody in the village will know. Possibly they were approached by the developer.
If you remember, Alan, and this is all just sort of bits and pieces of past history, we had an application and the owner of the farmhouse came to sit in front of us at the time. We had an application for putting a house on the piece of land that he owns up to the back and diagonally. And although we objected to it because we felt the little lane up there towards Mick's Wetlands wasn't wide enough, and in fact Mick pointed out it wasn't wide enough, we objected, but he got permission from Ashford to build a 5-bedroom house up there. Then he applied for, and I think got permission to do something with the garage at the end of that lane, to give that to the applicants for the house, which is why he wanted a garage in his front garden. And now we're told that the applicants for the potential applicants for the 20 or 28 houses have taken over or have got a deal that they can take over that piece of land for the 5-bedroom house, because you go up that lane, which will be widened until it's probably twice as wide as it is now, to make a two-way road. And it will then sort of cut across diagonally where the 5-bedroom house was going to be.
So what one has to just ask is, did the owners of the farmhouse know that there was this in the offing and that therefore they wanted to make that bit of land which they were applying to put a new house on but would not be building on, to make it very valuable for when they sold it to a developer? Do you see what I mean?
Right, exactly how people's mindsets worked, what came in what order, and what was a genuine proposal and what was a step in the right direction, we have no idea. But in a way, it all collapses at the end to what they now have in mind. And
of course, the other point is, the other historical point is that the owners of the two houses at the end of Lloyd's Green, facing the road, I think, have been approached 2 or 3 times, as I'm sure you all know, to ask if their houses could be demolished to allow an access through that. And whether that's still an option, I just don't know.
I don't think it. I mean, as you say, they've been asked a few times. My personal view is I'm sceptical that it would make sense to come out on that swan neck at the end of Lloyd's Green by the double bend. But then
it'd have to be a roundabout.
Indeed, great position. But then, or traffic lights. But then highways have so far said they don't have a problem with proper road thing, which I would have thought wasn't ideal either.
The pre-application advice has got 2 diagrams, and they had the original design of coming out on Swan Corner, but obviously the screening opinions has the modified plan on it with the new access via Poplar Farm. So I think that's their preference. Because of the new in the pond at White Cottage, as well as the fact it's a protected building, and obviously less expense because you haven't got to knock down 2 houses and things like that before you get going. So I think possibly this is the new favoured route.
Just a point, my other concern is for the neighbour on the other side of myself, Audrey, regarding if they're going to widen that road or lane or drive, it may well affect her position as well. And if you remember, she was extremely concerned with the possibility of the 5-bedroom house being behind and not giving her any privacy.
Yeah, it's an unhappy coming together of a number of things, and I suppose in a way it's a matter of wait for the next stage. But I think what you've told us, Jill, is very helpful, and the fact you've got those papers is very helpful. Ultimately, there will be an application clearly. It'll be consulted. There'll then be a huge rush, as always, because a lot of documents, and we do know that it'll go to the planning committee.
Yeah, and we do worry what with COVID restrictions at the moment, it's going to make it a lot more difficult this time round.
I should say one other thing, by the way. Although it was it doesn't help us that it went into the plan, and the inspector said he didn't mind them having 20 houses or whatever it was, but he wouldn't let them have the 40. But it is important also that Ashford took it back out of the plan. In other words, they are not making an application for a site that's in the plan. They're making an application for a site that was removed from the plan. And I think that there is a useful little point to add.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for the discussion. Been beneficial, thank you. And as soon as I'm sure I've got all I'm going to get from Ashford, I'll pass it on so that you've got all that I have.
That's really helpful. Thank you for taking the time and coming to see us.
Thanks, Jill.
Actually.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right, okay. Well, we haven't got anything else on the public session. So can we confirm the minutes of the previous meeting on the 25th of August?
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone have to make note?
Happy.
Okay. We're all satisfied with that? Right.
Yes.
They're approved, thank you. Matters arising, which isn't mentioned here, is the reason I said before, because it just hasn't got on the agenda. I was going to talk about Poplar Farmhouse anyway, but that's now well accommodated, and Yvonne was absolutely right in saying, well, the best thing to do is let it just come out in the public session. So that was well spotted. Scribe, we agreed last time that Yvonne would go for the Scribe accounts package.
Yeah.
Yvonne, you can give us an update on that.
I've spent some time on it. I think I've got to grips with it now, and it's coming together, basically. So I've only got one more month to reconcile with the bank, and I think I'm getting the reports looking like I want them to. So yeah, it's all good, thank you.
But in essence, you've done Scribe from the beginning of this financial year in April, and you've nearly caught up, which is good, and it's paid for.
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you for that. Heavy goods vehicles in Swan Street, we talked about at length last time. Let me just mention a few things, and that's all we probably need to say. After our discussion last time, I had a meeting with a resident about the situation to get a better understanding of what was happening and to point out some possible obligations that would have to be met, depending on what the situation was. Inquiries are now underway as to whether existing permits, there are existing permits, whether existing permits that are in place cover all the relevant activities, and what else, if anything, might need to be regularised, if anything, to meet all the regulations. So, that's work in progress, but it is being looked into to find out what the situation is. And so far, it may be that most of the permits are fine, or indeed all of them. There may be one outstanding or so, but we're waiting for the formal answer. After an informal answer. So that's heavy goods vehicles. Okay, so that's all I saw in matters arising. We've got to agree a response to the government proposals, the changes, the current planning system and the subsequent route and branch replacement. Well, that's in two parts, as indeed the government proposals were. The changes to the current planning system. There was a draft response to those proposals produced by Cal Ashford. I've circulated that to all of you.
Yes.
I also, just a couple of days ago, circulated a draft that I prepared of a response that could go from Wittersham Parish Council to section 1 of those proposals. where I'm up to speed, having worked on that section in the Ashford ones. And I invited anyone who wanted to look at the later sections to see if we had comments to make. I haven't had anyone so far come back on that, and we're running out of time. Unless there are any suggestions, I'll look through the calc draft, which has covered those other areas, to see if there are any points that we want to take up. But otherwise, I'd be inclined personally to leave them alone, as they're in technical areas that I'm not well versed in.
I would agree.
And I mean, it's important, I think, that we do put something in it. It's also important, and I'm afraid I meant to draft something and I haven't done it. A simple letter to Damien Green, just to add a bit of weight there, because we know that Damien and 9 other Kent MPs wrote to the Secretary of State complaining about the housing targets in quite sharp terms and asked for a meeting. I've sent a letter for Calc Ashford to him with the criticism of the way the targets were calculated, and we will be sending to him the whole Calc Ashford response, once it's ready to go into the government. And we'll send the Wittersham one as well, just to sort of keep his post bag moving, so that he knows. I mean, he knows already that it's a matter of great concern. He can't not.
Yeah.
It's not worse for Ashford, but it's bad enough. They just keep saying, well, you built a load, so build a few more. I mean, a few more than you did in the same period last time. Now, I think am I right in thinking that councillors are happy that we do put in, I've been through it, by the way, the draft I sent you of my words, there's a few sort of editing changes that I've made, but nothing material. Are we happy with sending that into the government?
I'm very happy about section 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was hoping to have had a meeting with Damien on Monday night when I would have raised part of this situation. However, he was called into the house to give to be a speaker, so the Zoom meeting I had with him was cancelled, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, maybe that will come back again, Colin, which would be nice.
Well, I would hope so. I shall be making contact.
Good. Meanwhile, as I'm sure you've seen, he's just gone ape again today. Over the 7,000 followers waiting for 2 days.
They were doing that today, let alone in the future.
Yeah.
Did I get Could have a practice. Okay, so I will finalise part 1. I'll look through and see if there's anything to add to part 2 and 3 that is, as it were, uncontroversial. We know we're generally on for affordable housing and things like that, but it can get quite technical about housing policy. I'm not well versed in that, whereas other people in Calc knew much more about that, and they've done those bits. Okay, now the second half of this agenda item is the subsequent root and branch replacement of the planning system. The status of that is that a couple of days ago I saw a sort of draft, but not anywhere near a final draft yet perhaps, of the Calc Ashford view. It was about 26 pages which I read through. There's an awful lot of good material there. This has come from parish councils. It does need editing down a bit, and it's not exactly repetitive. It's just that these are big, open, vague points that lead to big, open, vague answers. Goodness knows where it's going to get to, and I don't think any of us can assume that the civil service and the ministers will necessarily be glued to the thousands and thousands of replies they're going to get, but we need to put something in. And the same will happen again with Damien. I think I've said this probably to you before, I'm not that impressed with the current planning system, so I'm by no means defending what we have. I just think that they're bringing in some awfully difficult areas without being careful about it. did some very good stuff there, and coming from different parish councillors, chairman, two of them now are borough councillors, as Mick knows. There's a lot of experience, and I think it would be fair to say, just to keep us sort of slightly comforted, other parishes have got far worse problems than we have. Far worse.
At the moment.
At the moment, well, yes. I mean, this is one of the reasons why, although the housing generally gets put in the central belt, outside the AONBs, if Ashford keeps getting higher and higher targets, it's going to come here. And, we want some housing, but we don't want it in the wrong places. We don't want it in the wrong numbers. And subject to what any of you and all of you say when we get a planning application, my feeling at this stage from what we said last time, unless we've changed our minds, is we don't want it behind Lloyd's Green. But, you can see that Ashford may say, well, it's an easy win for 28.
Yeah.
But that's up to the committee in due course. Okay, so that's that item, unless anyone's got anything else to say about it.
No.
Only to say, well, I'm a bit sorry that I, for one, didn't send you any sort of helpful, supportive response to your document earlier, because I'd been away for a few days and it just didn't reach the top of my agenda, so apologies for that.
We'll have a look through it. It's only 3 pages, and it should kind of brief you on at least it's sort of my version, but it's also my version taking account of what Calc had done, which was much longer, and which I did work on, and making some obvious basic points about what's wrong with this targeting system. E.g., for instance, Ashford is regarded as being unaffordable because they compare the price of houses in Ashford with earnings in Ashford, and take note of the earnings in London, which is where a large number of them work. That doesn't make sense. But what that does is it says, it's unaffordable, we've got to add another 25% on the target.
Right.
These things make it, and that's thousands of houses. There's Park Farm and another Park Farm and another Park Farm. And on they go, or Collingwood Lakes or whatever. As Mick knows better than me. Okay, that's enough on that then. So now we need to resolve by the nature and sensitivity of the next item to exclude the public, to consider the new pay scales for 2021, agreed by the National Joint Council for Local Government Services, which should come in from 1st of April last, but they've only just agreed them. And these affect Yvonne, and we normally take these in closed session. So can I have a resolution, a proposer and a seconder?
I propose.
Closed session.
Yes, that me too.
Colin. So we are now in closed session, and that means that we will ask Victor to depart. But you're not going to miss anything, and we promise not to talk about you after you've gone.
Oh, we will, Mark.